I know we had a bit of a bobble with the data sources. So some of you went with the world and country data's GDPs, and some of you went with the state and counties GDPs, and that was my fault, and I apologize. We're going to talk about both data sets, but in general, can I get some feedback on your experience with the data set?
I thought the state and county data set was really good, and I feel like it was very organized and neat, and you could do a lot of interesting things with it. So I don't know if that's the kind of feedback you're looking for, but
No, that's all right. Were you able to produce a dashboard or any visualizations?
yeah, I made a couple different visualizations. Do you need us to put that on the public in order
Yeah,
to
if you
see it?
wanted to share it, we would want to put it on public. I did
Okay.
get an email from Josh where he sent me a link, so I have that all teed up to share and discuss with the group, but it would need to go on public. Do you remember how you got your last one on public?
Yeah, I think I remember how to do that. I just wasn't sure if you need that from
Uh,
us.
yeah, yeah. So
I don't.
go on.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that this is probably one of the hardest assignments we've done in class, and I had a really tough time, and maybe I was coming at it with not the clearest of minds, right? And so I would really appreciate it if I don't know if you're gonna make time for it during class, but I would love to go over that problem set again to see kind of how you did yours. I even watched the video. I think it's like an Australian lady and another guy talking for about an hour and a half, talking about how to interpret the data from week 40, and they lost me after about 45 minutes. They started doing some complicated stuff in Tableau, and I kind of zoned out a little bit. I was able to do some visualizations, but I think they're pretty basic. Yeah.
Yeah. So honestly, we were together for 9 hours total. What you saw in that video was somebody who had spent 13 years doing Tableau at least 40 hours a week. And what I wanted to, what I want to get across to you all is how much of a runway path you have with Tableau and how many other things are possible. But I don't want you to be so inundated with the possibilities that you say, well, it's completely impossible for me to ever get up there. But this was Jonathan that just did that comment. Did you produce anything?
Yes, I have a couple. Well, I think I have maybe like 6 or 7 different visualizations. I didn't do the dashboard. I honestly, I spent a lot of hours on this, but I'm also working on my doctoral thesis, and so it's I ran out of playtime, so to speak. I'm more than willing to email them to you or share the links, and I would appreciate any feedback. Obviously, I really want to get good with this.
Yeah, no, that'll be great. When we dive into what Josh did, I'll show everyone how. If you have it up on Tableau Public, you can share the links. And what we'll do is we'll be looking at 2 different data sets. There was a mistake in my webpage in the original email where I was actually looking at a different GDP data set. So I need to upload the data sets to my website and then provide the link to the media file on the website, and things got a little bit scrambled. For those who did do the USA county analysis, kudos to you. It was a hyper file, which was different than the Excel file or the CSV files that we looked at. So I mean, the general spirit that I'm approaching this with is that you all are educated, soon to be professionals, if not professionals already. I think you can go a lot further, a lot faster, if rather than building step by step, we give you big challenges in big shout out to Paul Leon, who had a huge challenge with just getting the software installed on his desktop, and went to Tableau support to understand why Tableau was looking to one file for his Tableau repository versus another. Something that in 4 or 5 years with Tableau, I've never seen anyone, I've never heard of anyone come up with that specific problem. Some of the things that I wish I had done earlier in our class, and we're going to look at them a little bit more, is where do you go if you're stymied? You know, where do you go for more help? Some of the feedback that I've given other people when they showed me visualizations is looking at the data. If you could wave a magic wand, you know, forget about what you know how to do in Tableau. Just think about what are the questions that you're asking now that you've done this analysis, and how would you think about visualizing it? That's a good start, because then if you start to think about that, chances are you can do it in Tableau, but it's going to take looking at a couple YouTubes. It's going to take doing some search. A big challenge is just understanding the name of the chart that you're trying to create. And we're going to go over a little bit of that this class as well. So with everyone's permission, I think what I'd like to do, and I think I'm getting a little bit better at Zoom. Let's see.
Actually, if I could kind of circle back to something you asked one of the other classmates who shared earlier. You said how to share to public, and I'll admit I'm a little behind. I couldn't figure that out. So I downloaded something so that I'm Tableau public, and but then what happens next?
Okay, well, let's take a quick look. So I am going to clean this up just a little. So if I take that out. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit confused over what you see versus what I see, but this is just some sample data from the GDP by country. What I would want to do is, I'm sorry, GDP by state, is go to my server button, say Tableau public, and then say save to Tableau public. Now what this means is that you have a Tableau public, you would need a Tableau public account. So in my directions and how to download the Tableau software, I included directions on registering an account with Tableau public. Tableau is getting a little unusual where you have multiple sign-ins for multiple things. So Tableau Public has a different sign-in than Tableau.com, which is where your license is. And then there's a Tableau Communities, which has a different sign-in. And just to save time on my part, what I do is I all have them to the same username, same password. But they're technically different sign-ins, and it's one of the creaky bits that, as Tableau is growing as an organization, hasn't kept really well. So once you have something uploaded to Tableau public, and really it would make a lot more sense to follow along our discussion now than to derail yourself trying to upload to Tableau public. We'll go to a break. You'll be able to upload at that time. Let me go look at a Tableau public visualization. So this was done by Josh. Good on you, Josh. I'm just so thrilled to see all of these things that I didn't go over in class being incorporated into your workbook. For people who have uploaded something to Tableau public, if you go to this specific icon and click on it, what you're going to do is get a link that you can copy and paste in an email, or you can copy and paste into the chat, and then I would be able to grab it and share it with the class. But before we talk about the dashboard itself, Josh, I want to put you on the spot and let me ask you, what are the techniques that you learned in creating this dashboard that you thought were particularly helpful to you? Or were there any that you thought were particularly helpful?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that I had to sort of figure out and sort of play around with was creating new, I guess variables is not the right word, I guess pills for each state. And so one of the ways that I had tried previously to look at the top right visualization with state versus national GDP. One of the
Right.
things I had been looking at was, do I want like a line for national GDP and then a line for the state overlaid on the exact same graph? And I was having a bit of trouble sort of getting those two separate lines in the same one. And I sort of figured that it might be better to separate them and just to highlight the top performers and then compare it to the national on a separate line.
Great, great. And I noticed you put annotations in here to try to call out a little bit more information. Was that something you had seen in other charts, or you just said to yourself, "Hey, I need to do this"?
Well, I had seen in the public, Makeover Monday visualizations that people have these really, really fancy charts with very customized annotations, and I figured that it doesn't really always mean much when you're just looking at the chart itself. But if there's some text in there to point you in the right direction, just to call out basically what is trying to be argued here. So, for example, for Alaska versus national GDP, if you take a look at the chart, you can probably figure it out pretty quickly. But I think adding it in text allows you to just make your point a little more clear.
Right, right. So how did you get this national line to show?
So I had basically just all states included in that one. And then I didn't filter out any individual states. But then for the 3 other states, I basically just created a new pill for each state, tracking their GDP over time.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Well done. I mean, really well done.
Thank you.
And I think, I really like it. If I were to I think it's fantastic for the amount of training that you've got. If we were to push this, the question is, why are we doing this visualization? So what you had seen with this whole Makeover Monday idea is a lot of people just focusing on, let me take a data set, let me show that data set, let me build graphs around this data set. So it's not that they're necessarily trying to support a line of reasoning or trying to support a line of argument. It's sort of like saying, well, what's in this data? I mean, there's a pony in here somewhere. Let's figure out what that pony is. Oftentimes when people are looking at data, they're trying to advance an argument. And I'm an old fogey when it comes to visualizations, and it's probably because when I went out to public sector organizations that were trying to use data to improve their business, these guys were it's like they were hardly eating at all. They weren't, it's not necessarily what were they eating, they just weren't eating at all. They weren't taking their data and starting to visualize it. And then when you look at Makeover Mondays, it's gotten to the point where it's not, well, let's consider the 4 basic food groups and put together a visualization. It's how can we design this dish we're serving to be visually attractive? There used to be a restaurant in DC that would disguise all its food. So you would order this dessert and it would look like sunny side up eggs, but it was actually mascarpone and some other, and it was really a good dessert, but it was just taking something that tasted good and was good for you and making it look completely different, or just visually going for the zazz. And Makeover Monday has started to become, let's go for that dazzle, and less for let's go for some real substance. Let's feed people some real information as we go along. And what it is it's data visualization geeks performing for other data visualization geeks. So you really never need to go to that extreme to make an impact in your business. Some of you might decide to become / professionals or citizen professionals with visualization, and it's perfectly fine to go further. But what I'd like you all to do when if you participate in future Makeover Mondays, if you do any sort of visualizations, the first step is to ask yourself, what is the argument being made? How am I trying to communicate information? Am I using this space wisely? Am I using this opportunity that I have to get in front of people wisely? And if you start asking yourself that, 90% of the zazzle on Makeover Monday really doesn't mean that much. It's really like, what are the arguments and what are the ideas coming across? So with that said, I really like the argument that 8 states combined for over 52% of national GDP in 2018. And if we wanted to take that argument and just make that an argument, maybe taking that as your header, and rather than having the map of the states, the chlorocleth map, sort of doing a bar chart where you list the states by their order of GDP, and then you have a running total where you're showing the running percentage of total of GDP. But a lot of people, when they the other thing to weigh against that is a lot of people see maps and they're impressed by maps because they honestly don't know how to do the map visualization. So it's not that the map is bad, it's just that perhaps for that annotated argument, there would have been a better way of showing it. I really like the headline for who best withstood the global financial crisis, going over to the right. So what we're doing is we're starting with a question, we're engaging with the audience, saying, let's look at that and let's ask ourselves that. So it's going beyond just what the data shows to asking questions about the context of the data. And that's where you all as public policy professionals can really start to add value. So I have just figured out that Tableau allows me to do this now. And it's something, I don't know if it was there last week, but I can go up here. I can do 2 things. One thing I can do is go down to this icon and say, download this as a Tableau workbook, and open it up in my Tableau to deconstruct what Josh has done. But I can also go here to this Explore beta. So this is in a beta version. And what we're going to have open for us is a web version of Tableau. And it's pretty awesome that it's doing it. I've never seen that feature before in Tableau Public, which makes me wonder if it's, I think it's relatively recent. So we can go to Josh's right-hand visualization, or viz. And this is pretty much the same view that you're going to get in Tableau Dashboard. You notice when I click on it, what happens is the sheet that was feeding this gets highlighted. So I can just click to go to that sheet. You'll also notice that I have this really nice little call out button that comes up. So I can do the call out button and go to the sheet. So what we see is just reading this. We're going to have a column for every year. we're going to have a table calculation, the sum GDP change, and I think what's going to happen is that's going to be the calculation used here, but Josh went along and changed it on the y-axis. So if we were to double click, we're able to change the y-axis. And I finally figured out how to make sure you all see these call out boxes that come up in Tableau. And then we have a calculation, this being done for Alaska, a pill for New York, and a pill for North Dakota. So these are custom calculations. If we go along in the left here, we see the custom calculations that were created. So let's take a look at the Alaska, and I'll just right click on this and say edit. And Josh, you want to explain what this calculation is doing?
Sure. So it's basically looking at if the value is equal to Alaska, then sum the GDP for all of those cells.
Absolutely. So
it's like a sum if function.
Right. Now that's perfect. You'll notice. Hang on a second. I'm just wondering. Yes, you do have the calculation window open. I've got two computers going here, so I can see exactly what you're saying, and then I'm seeing what Zoom is telling me, what I'm seeing, and sometimes they're not the same. So we're in the calculation creation box. If we were to click on this little arrow to the right, it would give us all of the functions that we can use in our calculations. So the calculation we used was a sum, and then an if-then statement. If we went down to, let's look at logical, and if we looked at if, Tableau would tell us this is how the if-then statement should be formed. We also see that we can pull this down and find the sheets that refer to this calculation. And this is really useful if you're 90 sheets into a specific data set and you say, well, what if I change a calculation? How is that going to affect me? So it's good to know that it's there. I just love the fact that what Josh has done is, we talked about it a little bit in class, but he's created this combination chart where he's taken multiple pills and has been able to show them. For example, so if we wanted to, we could move the pill New York to the right of North Dakota. And what that's going to do is redo the view. So New York is now at the bottom. If we wanted, we could take the New York off of our viz, and now it's not included. We can put New York back in our viz at any position that we want. Oh. And it's not going back as a table calc. Tableau Public is also conserving all of the back keys for us. So now it's back as a table calc. So Josh, when we're talking about who withstood the financial crisis best, what motivated you to how this order that they're listed in? What made you want to choose that order?
As in Alaska, then North Dakota, then New York?
Right. Yeah.
Really, I was most concerned with Alaska since most states seem to have a negative GDP growth from 2008 to 2009, but Alaska's is like 10%. So I basically just wanted to call that one out first, since that was the highest. But I picked these three states because if I had just done like all states individually, those ended up as the best performing from 2008 to 2009, right. Whereas most other states were negative. Yeah. But I just wanted to do it in the order that was that I thought was most impressive for each state, I guess.
Great. I mean, great way to approach it. It doesn't need to be alphabetical. It could be by the order of magnitude of what you want to show. And I never realized that in 2009, the year of the financial crisis, New York did so well. I would have thought it would have done a lot worse. So now we can go back to your bottom viz. So GDP growth, base year 2001 top performing states. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, Josh?
Yeah, so we had done this a bit last class. We're looking at the percentage change from the first value. So the first visualization with state versus national GDP, that's from the previous value. So growth from 2008 to 2009. But this is only looking at growth compared to 2001. So basically just seeing how each state has done for, the past 18 years. And originally it was, obviously a lot more confusing because there was 50 lines here. And I basically just tried to, I guess I ended up using a different table just to see, which states were the best performing, and then just chose to highlight those.
Outstanding. Yeah, I mean, North Dakota really is interesting. So it's definitely, I like the chart a lot. And again, I'm just clicking on the chart and I'm going to the page. One thing that you might want to do if you were asking yourself an index chart, traditionally index charts start at 100. So we can just go in here, I think, and say edit and shelf. And there's the calculation that your table calc editor created. So the table calc editor that Josh went into to design how this index is going to work, all it really does is create a regular expression within Tableau. And that regular expression you can look at and you can edit. But in our case, what I want to do is just go to the front of it and say 100 plus, and then hit enter. And then what we do is we're going to right click in the axes. So now I'm sort of learning what Tableau Public Edit View lets us do or doesn't do. So if I right click, it's not giving me access control. No, it was letting me view the data. We would just resize our axes so that we would have top performing states and then say 2001 equals 100 or something like that. So it's pretty easy to get to a traditional index calculation using the table calculation that Tableau did. And if we go into Tableau and anyone wants to see it, I'm happy to show it. It's in the Tableau desktop, I would be able to right click on the margin on the axis and be able to say, start the axis at 100. So we would be getting, here we go. So what we're going to do is we're not going to include 0. And, we might want to format our, we would format the title, we would format the percentages, but this is going back to an index of 100 as your base versus 0. Just a small observation of what can be done.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any thoughts on, if they could wave a magic wand with what Josh has done, what questions does this inspire you to ask. And Josh, I'm sorry I messed up the dashboard by playing around. Your dashboard is correct. What Tableau did is made a copy of your dashboard, put it into my profile, and let me play with it. So the version I'm playing with got messed up, but yours is fine. But with the questions and observations that Josh was able to see, are there other questions that are coming to anyone else's mind?
I just had a quick question for the bottom, the top performing states. It looks like there's 4 lines, but only 3 states. So I was just curious if
I think
like
the
right near the
last one is
Washington,
Utah.
Texas.
But there's it
Okay.
just wouldn't let me display that because they all seem to converge on the same percent
Okay.
at the end.
Right.
Okay,
So I
that
think if I had,
totally, okay.
yeah, if I
Right.
had made it like an earlier year, it probably would have been able to show better.
Yeah. But no, that's
Okay.
a great question or a great observation. And again, I'm in uncharted territory, never having tried any of this on the Tableau public site. But if we go to label and we say edit label, no, we're not getting that. Hang on. Okay, well, we're finding, so if we were on Tableau desktop and not going through the web, looking at the Tableau public, I would go into my label mark card, hit that, and there's a checkbox that says show labels for every line. The reason it's not showing labels for every line is because the labels would be on top of each other. So we have 3 lines that converge. It was only able to show 2. And it would show us all 3 labels. And at that point, we could click on the Texas label and drag it down a bit. So the mark labels that Tableau shows, we're able to click on them and drag them around the desktop. And we'll demo that as we get into the desktop. Any other thoughts or questions?
Well, I think Josh did way better than I did. I think mine was very basic in comparison. But I was when I was looking at the videos, I think it was the live stream of the makeover event. They came out with some really gnarly sort of maps on their own versions. And then also, I think there was a 3D map that I saw at some point. But I'm assuming you can't do that with Tableau, right? You might need a plugin for that.
Right. So there's a map. There's a version I want to show you that I thought was pretty snazzy. I think I have it up here on my browser. And so that is not a 3-dimensional map, but it sort of looks like a 3-dimensional map. And I'm blown away by it. You know, I would argue perhaps it's trying to show too much information. You know, we're color coding the regions so that you look at this and you can theoretically go back between or we can just highlight the region and do some sort of guided analysis with it. Perhaps that's a little more information and a little more ability that almost gets in the way of our ability to understand the data. I like the fact that it's got the top 10 counties. And the counties are also color labeled by the region. So maybe that's useful. But this is really cool. The way that the author has put the spike there on Los Angeles. This is here. So this is the original visualization that was done. And let me see if I can blow this up a bit. So, yeah, let me ask the group, what do you think of this? Presenting something as a 3D chart.
I think it's awesome. I once saw an art exhibit that used this type of data visualization, and I thought it just brought the point home in a way that it wouldn't have otherwise.
Okay. Do you all think that I know it's snazzy, but how is it at sharing information? For example, can you look at San Francisco over here and compare it with, I guess that's Seattle over here? And, you know, maybe the way that the map is being shoved at us, you know, it's being angled, you know, can we really see whether the San Francisco point is bigger than the Seattle point? Or if the Chicago point was closer up, would it look a lot taller?
Yeah,
So-
you definitely made some perspective.
Okay, yeah.
I think something like this is probably best used, like I said, like in sort of an art exhibit where you don't have people who are looking at the details, but they want to get a specific message across. And so you are able to angle it that way to tell the story you want to tell. But then, sure, it is very difficult to understand the particular details of which spike, what the spike actually means and what the real numbers and data behind it are comparatively.
Absolutely. And, you know, there's room for everybody in this world. Yeah, and there's rooms for different approaches in the world. And perhaps some of the approaches are, let me draw people in with this snazzy visualization and then tell a story. But going back to that, it's not walk before you can run, but it's a different idea than let's present data. So I've been in so many organizations where people are trying to do something snazzy versus informative, when the business users that they're sharing it with really need something informative in order to make a decision. You know, these people, and you all as public policy professionals, are going to be looking at making significant decisions which are impacting the lives of lots and lots of people. I suggest that, you know, as a basic rule, ask yourself, how well is it sharing information? And then if it's really snazzy and it's not sharing information as well, all rules are made to be broken. You know, I'm not giving you a prescription that should be used throughout your career, but I am suggesting that should be a basic question that's always asked with every visualization. So this is an eyeglass case. And for those of you, when you go fishing and someone's taking a picture of everyone holding their fish, make sure that you hold your fish like this, you know, be the one holding it most toward the camera, because that's the way that your fish looks bigger than anyone else's fish. But what really interested me about this particular visualization is that you're not getting the 3D perspective, but what you're getting is something kind of like the 3D perspective. So I'm just blown away by it. I really don't know how the user, the author Dorian did it. I see a website down here that probably leads to a blog post where he or she explains how they did it. And I think it's a lot more effective. Hang on just a second. I think it's a lot more effective than just coloring the states, because you're all of a sudden you're seeing that there's this discontinuity between the states where it's specific within the states, that it's specific counties that make up for a lot of the state. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this. Let's take a look at Twitter. So the way this used to work is everyone would do things on Twitter. They wouldn't go to Data World, which meant that everybody had a common place where they were showing visualizations. I'm sorry about the scantily clad woman down here. That's some sort of ad. But this is a common way that people have started to try to represent states, is either in a hexagon or a square. Unlike a chloropleth, where what we're doing is coloring states, what that results is every state is not being considered as one equal entity. The states are being considered by their landmass. So Texas has a disproportionate impact when you look at that sort of map versus looking at a map like this. And what they're letting you do, I'm not a huge fan of how this is colored. It's hard to see really distinctions between the different states. What this author did is they looked at the data and they said, for my top visualization, I'm just going to show 1 year. The data set shows 2001 to 2019, I think, or 2018. I'm just going to show 2018. And then I imagine if you click on the different state, it's going to show you a map over time and then information for the top 10 counties. So there was this thought process in the author's mind that what I want to do is not present the ocean. I'm just going to present a view into it. So the first view is the states that are the state's GDP for 2018. And then when they follow my directions, and it's always good to have directions, click on the state on the map, you're going to show change over time and then the top 10 counties, not all of the counties that go into the state. And let's scroll past the woman. So this is a hexagon idea. If you looked at the original makeover, that visualization that inspired this Makeover Monday, there was this great visualization where it was comparing the GDP for each state with GDPs of other countries. So I think Texas was equal to the United Kingdom, or California was equal to the United Kingdom. And this person, Charlie Hutchison, who helps run Makeover Monday, is following that line of thought. So if we go, no, that's not Charlie Hutchison who did it. In general, if you get into Makeover Monday and you start engaging in this and publishing on Twitter, most Makeover Monday posts should have a link to the Tableau public. So this is a viz that they're showing you a picture of, but they're not giving you the capability to click into it. While this visualization is, so we're able to see a static visualization on Twitter, just real quick, and then we can open up the Makeover Monday contribution. And I think I looked at I was struck enough by this, I looked at the sheets underneath, and the sheets are all labeled in Japanese. So I think this author is Japanese. So the question is, what is the distribution in the counties from 2001 and 2018 between all counties? And you'll notice we have labels for each state. In this case, it's not a bad idea, because what I'm really interested in is North Dakota, because it has such a wide range. And I see, in fact, that it's just a couple counties that are accounting for this recent economic boom that we were talking about. But of them all, Texas has the greatest variation. And I think the author was calling that out to us by the title of the visualization. Another hexagram chart. So this is running with the idea of the regions and looking at the relative change in GDP across states. And yeah, I like a couple of things that are done. Let's see if there's a web address for this. Yeah, there is a web address for this. So I'm blown away by the fact that he has this circle in here. So this is a GIF that the author has added to the page and custom dropped onto the page at exactly that point in order to make these annotations make a little bit more sense. I'm not a huge fan of the title. I'm not, we're not getting that with the title that we were getting here. So there's something going on in Tableau, the way that this was published, where it's not coming through. My theory is that the author, instead of using text for the title, was using GIF images for the titles, and somehow the address for those GIFs fell off. So you're not seeing the full title. And this could have been done in Tableau. It's not that easy to get one line of text really big and then like an opposing column with 2 lines of text. It's doable. It's definitely doable. But I think he or she tried to do it using a GIF, and that didn't work. And the author never checked, or when the author looked at it on Tableau Public, it never registered to them that the GIF wasn't there. So we're looking at California 2009. Yeah, I'm not getting it. I'm not getting why this is circled for California, but this is talking about all of the country, and this is talking about Alaska, but it seems to be next to something talking about North Dakota, and then North Dakota is down here. So yeah, just a little bit of cleaning up, but it's an interesting way of looking across all of the years, across all of the states. And here we see the North Dakota increase in 2012, the decrease really pops. It's an increase. So one of my disadvantages, and we'll probably run into a visualization that talks about it, is like 10% of the population, I'm colorblind. So I'm not able to see differences between green and red, which is one of the chart makers' favorite way of showing losses and profits. So when I see these dark colors, I'm always never sure whether it's showing an increase or decrease. But in this case, it's showing an increase because it's above the line. The decreases are below the line. And let's take a look at one other. So now what we're doing is we're getting snazzier in how we're showing things, and I think this is very visually attractive. I like how the author has highlighted the word counties, so they're saying counties across USA, which contributed more than 1%. So they're specifically highlighting parts of the title that they want to emphasize when you're looking at it. And you look at the 2 visualizations that are shown. They're shown 2001, 2018. And the question is there a change? So Santa Clara is on 2018, but it's not even on 2001, which I think is interesting, but wasn't called out. And then King is added onto. No, King was on there. So the way I got to this was just by going to my Twitter feed, saying Makeover Monday GDP. Let's see. Did you all have a chance to look at what my submission for the Makeover Monday was?
Yeah, I did. I thought it was interesting too.
Yeah.
You definitely, it sounded like you answered a very different question than other people were asking.
Yeah. So I'm doing this whole research in computational social science. So, this is really big, is Pareto equations. We're looking at the 80-20 principle and its power laws, and it's a surprising rule that's manifest through many different phenomena of human activity. So they reviewed this visualization on the half-hour live thing that was being done. So I spent about half an hour putting it together. I submitted it during the session. And what really surprised me was how quickly they went at this and how they were looking for like these instant answers. Like one of the questions was from the reviewer was, well, what does the different colors show? And I'm like, well, there's the legend right there. The different densities are showing the different patterns between years. So this is a matter of style. I like visualizations that are saying something and are arguing something. So I tend to put a lot of text on my visualizations. You'll notice that a lot of the other ones that we saw aren't putting nearly as much text, but arguably they're not saying as much. So again, I mean, it's a big tent. There's lots of ways to do what you decide to do. I'm just making an argument for this is why I decide to do what I do. The other thing that I would urge everyone to think about putting on any visualization you do is the data source. So I have a hypertext link to the data source. And we're back to the scantily clad woman. This is Data World. Is there anybody on the call that thinks they'll participate in another Makeover Monday?
Oh, I think I will. I made an account so I can download the data sets, and I definitely will keep up with it.
Great.
I'm not sure if I'll be able to. I'm tough enough to show my work though. I think at this point it looks pretty bad. I need to work on it.
It's just a matter of repetition. It's a matter of practice. The big thing to do is continue to ask yourself, not what can I do in Tableau with my existing skills, but given this data, given what I'm seeing, what is the next best question to ask and how can I show that in Tableau? So the way that the Makeover Monday works is we've been giving you a little bit of training wheels on this. Is they announce it here in this website called Data World, where you need to get your own login and ID. And then there's a discussion capability. And here on the discussions, you see other people who are contributing that didn't post up onto Twitter. So it's a fragmented, we had 142 people respond to this challenge. I think there were over 1,500 people on the live video because it was all dealing with Tableau conference, which was going on. The sessions were pretty amazing. They're putting a lot of the recordings on the web. They had this great little advertisement about pie charts, and it showed a big pie and then a real small slice, and it said this is the percentage of pie charts that are meaningful. But it was it was a great session. They'll be uploading all the episodes onto YouTube, and if anyone signed up for it, you'll be able to get into Tableau Conference. So this was done as part of Tableau Conference. And this site is a little clunky to use, but you'll see a lot of people putting up at least a link to their visualization. Let me make this a little smaller. Yeah, and there's some interesting approaches. I hadn't seen this guy before. So here we're able to combine the geographic map with a lot of other information. I would have liked a legend here that explained what everything was, but as we mouse over the different marks, you see something called Viz and Viz. And if you all are interested, I'm happy to show you how that's done. But this is a pretty sophisticated approach. Okay, guys. Let's go. So how many people would like to share other visualizations they've done with us? What I'm going to do is 6:57. Let's take a 5-minute break. It'll give you a chance to upload anything you want to Tableau Public, and then just share the link in the chat. So I will be back in 5 minutes and talk to you soon. Hey, while we're waiting to get started, is there anybody who wants to upload something to Tableau Public that is having a problem? Or is there anyone who's uploaded something to Tableau Public already who wants to share, who's having a problem figuring out how to share it over chat? Because honestly, chat is pretty empty, and it's okay. We don't need to look at others. But I really appreciate Josh sharing, and glad we had that opportunity to look at his.
Paul, could you walk through the steps of uploading again, please?
Sure. So here I am in Tableau Public. And what I would do is go to Server, Tableau Public, Save to Tableau Public. And when I do this, it's very likely that I'm going to get an error saying that a data extract is required. So what Tableau Public wants you to do is extract your data, which compresses it, because we're sending our workbook as well as our data over the internet, and it's being hosted by Tableau Public for free. So in that case, what we would do is right-click on our data source and say extract data, and just click on extract. And we create an extract for the data, which is that compressed file. And then when you say publish to Tableau Public, it's going to automatically send it in that compressed format.
I can show one of mine. It's pretty basic, so I guess.
Sure. And you know what, guys? We don't have to do this on Tableau Public. Would you like, Emily, would you like me to just let you share?
I uploaded it, so that way I guess you can.
Okay.
I just put it in the chat.
Great.
Yeah, I'd be interested if you think there are better ways to do this or just make it better. It's really basic.
Yeah. To Sarat, thanks for sharing the link to the art installation. There's a lot of really interesting things being done with visualizing data in artistic format. A lot of interesting sculptures as well. Mm-hmm. So Emily, do you want to tell us about this?
Sure. So I'm from upstate New York, obviously, which is why I was kind of interested in, I guess, looking at the GDP. And I feel like this probably would be better if it was city data as opposed to county data, but
yeah.
To me, it kind of made sense because even though like Albany is the capital of New York State, this went more by population for GDP. So like Erie is where Buffalo is, which is the biggest city in upstate New York, and then Rochester, Syracuse, and then Albany is, that like green line. So it was just like a curiosity thing for me. It wasn't necessarily something that's telling for, I guess, a widespread audience, but that was kind of why I did it. And potentially growth might be even better measure. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that's what I did. I don't know.
So, I mean, looking at it, does that the whole goal is not to get an answer, but to get more questions? I mean, what question would you ask from looking at this comparison?
Yeah, I guess I was just interested that like Buffalo, for example, seems to be rising, just because I know just from being from the area, it used to be a very industrial city, and now I think it's kind of on, I guess, harder times per se. So I was really interested to kind of see that GDP kind of growth over time personally.
Right. So Buffalo's in Erie County?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I think so. I agree. I mean, Yeah, you know, I'm saying make an argument with your data, and sometimes we go with our data without any arguments in mind. So find something interesting in the data and make arguments around it. Let's take a look at your workbook. And I notice that you're looking at the average here. Why are you doing that?
I did the average because that's what we had done in class with sum, but if the sum makes more sense, then, or if a different measure does, if you think.
Well, let's do this. I'm going to test the Tableau Public and see if it does this. I'm holding my command key on my Mac and I'm making another pill. So now we have the same thing twice, but I'm going to go from average to sum. And you'll notice that it's exactly the same. So what we were doing when we were doing the average of the movie budget is we were saying, okay, let's look at R-rated movies. What's the average budget for a movie in R-rated movies? And we might have 50 different movies in R and 10 movies that are G-rated. So just looking at the sum of the budget gives you information, but it doesn't really give you information about what the average movie in those genres were.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way we were aggregating the data. So the way we're aggregating the data in this data set is what does each row contain? Emily, what does each row contain in this data set?
Each row is the GDP. Is that what you're?
GDP for what?
For each county.
For each county, for what?
Each year.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so it's GDP by county by year, and that's what every single row stands for. So in this case, the sum and the average are going to be exactly the same. So you didn't do anything wrong. You did great. You had a double thumbs up. But I just wanted to, you know, go down that line a little bit with you.
No, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know mine isn't super impressive. It was different than what was done. So
it's freaking beautiful. It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, the other suggestion, you know, when I was looking at this is I was a little confused because I was seeing this city names and then I was seeing the counties as in the legends, and it took me a while to say, oh, okay, you know, that she's thinking of what county contains what city.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out a way if in the like county legend I could put the name, I guess, in parentheses or something, but I couldn't really figure out how to do that because I thought that would kind of be confusing if you didn't know the area as well. I was trying to figure out if that was a thing to make that easier, but
it could be confusing. So if we were in Tableau Public, I could click on this county and then say alias. Okay. And I could put in Albany, you know, I could add Albany space parentheses Albany.
Okay.
You know, so you're able to edit it in multiple, you're able to do it in multiple different ways. I'm just not sure, and you know, over the web, which is really cool that I'm able to do that. Phenomenal tree map. You know, with this guy, maybe what we could have done is click on size and increase the size of our circles a little bit.
Yeah. Probably be better. That looks so much better.
Yeah, but it's when you put it into a dashboard, it's going to change a little bit and surprise you. And then GDP by state over time. You know,
Yeah, I was just playing around with that. I didn't do much with it.
Yeah.
So obviously you would probably only want to highlight a couple like Josh did.
Well, I mean, just looking at this, what really interests me is that California might not be the highest percentage increase when you're looking at all the states. But I mean, the gap is growing. I would see, like a visualization of California versus the rest
Mhm.
as being really interesting, because it looks like California's pulling away and it looks like Massachusetts is pulling away. And this idea that Massachusetts was down there, yeah. So now I'm thinking about, does this work with everything else we've learned in terms of the relative ranking of the states? Like, I don't know if Connecticut really is the number 3 state in 2018. Oh, here we go. Let's go here. So this average, because you're doing the average, it's looking at the average of each county. So New York State might have a lot of different counties, but if we took it to sum, what we're doing is we're getting a much different picture. So here's California, here's Texas. But still California is pulling away, New York, Florida. So the reason our calculation changed so much, the order of the states, and let me drag my states out to label. So the reason that the order changed so much between the states, and what I'll have to do is drag states out to label here. Is because we're taking an average of a number. Each row is a county by year. So District of Columbia has one county. Actually, District of Columbia is not a state, but hopefully that'll change. And that's why you're seeing District of Columbia up at the top. So as we change our calculation aggregation to sum, what we're going to see is California is going to come out on top.
Oh, so it's that because DC is considered one county, it's making all of this, so it's
Right.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense because I was kind of confused by that one.
Right. So what we can do is we can take county over here. Yeah, this is county. And I'm just going to drag it into here. And I'm going to say, change this measure to the count of counties. And then I'm going to put it into my tooltip. So now California has 58 counties. And what we were doing was saying, what is the average GDP for California divided by 58? And Texas has 254 counties. So we were dividing that by 254. So it's just keeping the aggregation straight would help, not just with the visualization. Well, the visualization is great, but the way that it's being calculated.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know Jonathan also put his in the chat as well.
Yeah, we're moving on. Absolutely.
Thanks for calling me out. I appreciate it.
No. We're gonna get it done, and then we're gonna.
I was trying to fly under the radar.
No, thank you so much. Okay. So let's see. Top 10 states, highest GDP. I'm digging the mark labels, digging the lines on the chart. You know, I'm even digging shoot, there's a name for the coloration that's being done where the lower lines are less dark than the higher.
Honestly, none of this is really my work. I was trying to follow along with the video, the guys doing the, and but I think I got through like 45 minutes of it, and then it got to be a little too hard. So.
Yeah, no, and that's fine. You know, so the guy who was delivering it's named Andy Kriebel. He's been doing Tableau for 13 years. He started as an intern for Pepsi. And using Tableau, he was able to show Pepsi how they could earn like $1 billion more a year by changing the mix of the sodas that were in the soda machines. So then after that, he became head of analytics for YouTube and then was working for Facebook. And now he's at something called the Information Lab, which is a company that specializes in Tableau instruction. And he's not only a terrifically talented visualization person, he's a really, really nice guy. His website is listed under my Visualist site. Andy goes by VizWiz. And what he'll do is for some of these Makeover Mondays, he'll have Watch Me Viz. And he'll spend half an hour to 45 minutes where he's going a lot more slowly. So basically, he hadn't seen the data. He was being asked to analyze the data, build visualizations about the data, and provide commentary all live, which is a tall order. But 50 to 80% of everything I know, I learned from looking at that website and from learning from Andy Kriebel. So a really good source to be aware of. And I really love the way that you washed out the map. You took out a lot of the unnecessary information. Tableau really needs to do a one-click button that says just show United States and don't show the Canada and Mexico and all the other little islands that are here to the right. Is there anything you'd like to call out in this dashboard?
Yeah, I thought the map idea is definitely, I forgot the name of the lady that was running through the presentation first. She's the one that spent the first 45 minutes just kind of playing around with the data. And she's, from her, I learned how to wash out the areas. We ended up excluding the data for Alaska and Hawaii in order to sort of just show the United States, like the continental US. And that was helpful. And then also this is just style preferences, obviously, but darkening the borders, especially those borders that touch water was really neat.
Right.
Yeah, like that area. I thought that was really neat, the way that they did that. As far as the top, like the top 2 boxes, the top 10, I thought that's super basic, but I just kind of wanted to show sort of like the top 10 states since 2001 and the bottom 10 states. I know that no policy maker at the federal government level would ever use anything like this, but I was kind of joking on the side with Emily about how this could be like in a BuzzFeed article, something like that you see online to sort of like catch your interest. You wouldn't believe what the top 10 states are, right?
See how they've changed.
Yeah, that's how they get you, like it would be like a good hook, like top 10 or the bottom 10 poorest states in the United States. So that's kind of what I was going for.
I like it. I mean, just following along that idea, somehow it's like this sort of race, and it looks like California is maintaining its lead, but Texas is sort of breaking out, so there's maybe a lead group, or I forgot what you call it in cycling with the Peloton, the lead group could be interesting. For those of you who are going into public policy visualizations and you're working for the US government, never ever leave Hawaii and Alaska out of the map. You know, particularly if it's a public-facing visualization. You know, and here I'll show you a quick website. And there's different ways that you would do this. So FEMA was one of my customers. And I haven't looked at this in a couple years, but let's look at, they've gotten rid of their whole United States map. So they had artificially pulled Hawaii and Alaska down below the United States, and then they needed to take the Virgin Islands and Guam and pull them onto the map. And it got really tough. So what they've decided to do, it looks like, is just go by state. And we can go take a look at Guam. And that's not the best map. But, you know, in general, you wouldn't, for our purposes in playing around, it's absolutely fine to, I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out, here we are, to take Hawaii and Alaska off, particularly when you're trying to do a detailed data visualization in an hour and a half, but it's a really hard thing to do. Okay, so what I wanted to do was highlight one way of approaching a task that Josh was heading towards. And in order to do so, we're going to need everybody to have the data set that was used. So does everybody have the GDP by county? Because I know some of you probably worked with the country and world data instead.
I don't have it, but I can download it real quick. It's been updated on this
Right.
website?
So go to Power Start workshops. Here we have the US GDP CSV data set. And I included the older data set that was erroneously included in the instructions just to make it keep the trail. But this is the data set you want. Okay, everyone got it? So what I'm going to do is just do a brand new workbook in Tableau. And since I'm opening it up, let's check. You'll notice down here in the lower right is they're providing links to some of the Tableau conferences. It was over 150,000 people who registered for it. So that's pretty cool. That's really cool. Big numbers, and it's just grown since I started using it. So what I'm going to do is connect. I was open on that page. I'm going to connect to data. I'm going to connect to a text file. We're going to connect to the GDP by county CSV. And we're going to open it up. So here again in our data view, we're sort of able to look at this and say, okay, what is my data set? And the question that you need to ask yourself time after time is, what does each row in the data set represent? Because that's going to affect how you do all your calculations, how you approach the data. The second thing you need to ask yourself is, does each row in my data set represent one observation? So in this case, there's only one GDP chain. I was going to create a data set out of this that wasn't a tidy data set, where what I would do is build columns as we go out for years. So it would be one row for county, one row for, column for county, column for region, but one row for every single year. And then we would have had to pivot it in order to do the analysis we want. I guarantee you, as you move forward with Tableau, you're going to run across data source after data source that needs to be pivoted, because most times Excel sheets are created for visual analysis. And that's why they're putting the years across the rows, while for a data analysis, we need to make it a little less attractive to the eye, or interpretable to the eye, but it makes it more interpretable to the machine. So I want to introduce to you a concept called an LOD calculation. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask you all, well, no, I had the sample things to create. I'm really glad we've been doing this free for all, and let's stick with it. Is anybody not there with this data set loaded in a blank sheet of Tableau? Okay, so let's do this. Let's take out our states. And then let's take our chain GDP. So we've got a little bit of a table here. And I've been in public policy for a while now, and I've had a lot of courses that were titled economics, but this is the first time I've run into the chained term, chained GDP. Is that something that I missed out generationally? Are y'all familiar with it?
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. So let's add to this, and let's go ahead, and we're going to say year going across. And we get something really ugly. This is another gotcha with Tableau, is that when it comes to things like year, when it comes to date calculations, Tableau offers a lot of power, but there's ways that it makes you get confused. Can someone with correct color vision tell me what color this pill is? Is this green?
That's green.
Okay, so a green field is telling you that a field is continuous. So it's interpreting year to be a continuous measure, which is why some of your year columns were a little bit crowded. If we want to have it treat this categorically, where every year is a discrete difference, what I do is I right click on it and I say treat as discrete. So as you go further in Tableau, there's a couple really good tutorials that are all based about what the color of the pill is. And since I really don't see with colors, I haven't paid that much attention to it. But when people are asked, what's the first thing you should learn to use Tableau? The very first thing is to understand what your data structure is, what each row represents. But number two is to understand what the color of the pills represent. So now we've got a data table that's showing our state, and it's showing what our chain GDP is per year for each state. Let's go ahead and create a table, a calculation, and I'm going to say create a calculated field, and I'm going to call this fixed national. And follow along, and then I'm going to explain what I've done. So I started with a bracket, a curly-Q left bracket. Then I start to type fix, and then I see fixed. So I accept that. And then I'm going to say sum of GDP chained. And you'll notice that my calculation still maintains errors. So it expects a parentheses, curly-Q bracket at the end. I'm going to go ahead and give it 1. Now I'm told the calculation is valid. So I'm going to say OK. And then I'm going to drag this out onto my table. How are y'all doing? Are you there? Okay.
Good to go.
Good to go. So let me ask you all, what do you think that fixed calculation is doing?
Is it a comparison of the total national GDP versus that state's GDP for that year?
Well, does it change between the years? I'm sorry,
No,
the
it
numbers
does not.
Yeah, it doesn't. So you're onto something. I mean, it is the national, but it's a national for every state and for every what?
Every year.
Yeah,
But this is, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just taking all our columns, all our rows, and giving us this total. But that's not what we want. So if we can go back to our fixed national and click edit. So I'm right clicking on it, I'm going edit. What I can say is the way Tableau, I'm sorry, let me go back for a second. So conceptually, the way Tableau works is we provided a frame and it's going to do aggregations within that frame. We provided a frame where we said we want rows to go down the left, we want columns to go across the right, we want years to go across the right, and we want states to go down the left. So within that framework, we're going to drag our pill called sum of GDP, the GDP chain, drop it in there, and then Tableau is going to go down through every single record and take all the Alabama that 2001 and put it into and sum it up in Alabama 2001. So we know we only have 1 row per year per state, but if we had 2 rows per year per state, it would sum those up. You know, so we see here on the pill that our aggregation is the sum of the GDP chain. So that's what Tableau is doing. So the 156 billion is that intersection. You know, let's go through all our rows. Let's go through. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. So so it's going through all the rows, and each row is a county in a state. So it's saying for the total number of counties, the sum of GDP was 156 billion. And this is 280 trillion. So 156 billion. So what was it? Texas had 254 states, you know, for 254 counties. So it's going to go through every single row for 2001. There's 254 rows, one for each county for 2001, and Tableau is going to sum that. So that's what happens when we just drop a pill onto our canvas. Now, when we do the fixed, this is called an LOD calculation using the brackets. LOD stands for level of detail. And what this is saying is fixed, no matter what is showing on the screen, what is showing in your visualization, just give me the sum of the GDP. So it's going to go down into our records, and it's going to just sum for every single row. And it could be, for every county in 2001, for every state in 2001, and then for every year, give us the sum of what that GDP is. So I know I did that with a lot of gestures. Does that sort of make sense as far as, do you have a feel for what Tableau is doing? Okay, so what we want ultimately, and this is going on what Josh was saying, is we want to compare how the nation has done with the states, is we'd like to see this change over year. So the way a level of detail calculation works, and I would be thrilled if you walk out of here knowing how to do a level of detail calculations, but what's really more important is that you understand that these exist and that you might need them, because what ultimately the thing that Josh was facing is he wanted to compare these two things, but he wasn't quite sure how to get them onto the canvas. So if you want something on the canvas that goes beyond the scaffolding you built, a level of detail expression is really a good way to get at it. So in this case, we're going to say fixed year, the sum of GDP changed. And then when we hit OK, what we're going to see is that we have our national GDP, which is being shown for every state, and then it's changing for years. So here's a question for you. If I went back to my level of detail and I said, don't only calculate my fixed national by the year, but I also want to see it calculated by state, what do you think we're going to come up with? And this is hard. I mean, if I hit OK, what we're going to come up with is the same calculation we would have had if we hadn't done a level of detail. So my canvas has two dimensions, state and year. And if I put both of those dimensions in my fixed level of detail, then it's going to do the exact thing my canvas was doing. So it's a little bit tricky of an idea to work around. If you get the gist of it, you're doing great. So we have our fixed year, our sum of GDP change. And again, what I've done is I've created a level of detail calculation that goes outside of my viz, of the elements that are on my viz, and does a calculation based on what's in the data table. So I'm saying, don't look at what I'm saying to visualize, look at what the data table is, but I've added the fact that I want it to change by year. So I have the sum of GDP for each state by year, and then I have the sum of the GDP for the nation by year. And you notice everything changes year over year over year. So now that we have that, our next goal is, well, why don't we go ahead and visualize that? So I am going to go ahead and just duplicate this, because I want to be able to go back and look at it, maybe for argument's sake. So the next thing I want to do is ask myself, well, what was the relative change? And we're going to create a table calculation, that looks at the difference from the percentage difference from specific dimension year relative to the previous. So let's just do how things changed over time. And I'm going to repeat that table calculation. So now what we have is how has the nation done versus how has the state done year over year. And let me duplicate that one more time. And what I want to do is take out measure names. And I'm going to put both pills up into my row. I know I've moved a lot. Is there anyone who wants to follow along with their workbook that I should go over something for, or you want to just follow along with what I'm doing?
At this point, I think I'm okay following you.
Okay.
Same here.
Yeah, yeah. So one quick review, we went from the actual numbers. I created the fixed level of detail calculation to show me for the nation what happened every year, but it shows up when I have it in a pane that's for the state. So this is going to show up in every single pane, whether I'm Connecticut or Georgia, but it's going to change year over year. And then what I did was say, make this a table calculation, show me how it changed from the previous year. And now I'm starting to build a visualization with it. So I had two pills up at the top. And one thing we haven't talked about yet is, you know, as we add these pills, what we do is we go into our pane and we get another row for that pane. So if I added region up to here, what we would do is we would get, well, that didn't give us a row for region. I don't have anything really good to add into here, but I could add, just like we saw Josh do this with the states where I did Alaska, New York, and North Dakota, we can layer that and get additional ones. But I can also right click on this and say, show me, sorry, I need to right click on my second one and say, show this as a dual axis. So now we're showing the percentage GDP for Alabama, and then the blue is what's happening in the nation. And you'll notice I have a couple things going here. One is I have these pull downs on my mark card. So if I want to change the visualization here, let's say I want to make it all an area chart, it's going to affect everything. But if I go to the pull down window and I say, this is my fixed level of detail, I actually want to make that an area chart, but I want this guy not to be an area chart, but to be a line chart. So now we have an area chart showing what happened to the entire nation and a line chart that's showing what happened to the specific state. And if we look at the two different axes, we see that they're very different. One is going to 20%, one is going to 10%. So you would want to right click on the axes and say synchronize. And I'm going to right click on one more time and say, click off the show header. So now what we have is state by state a visualization showing the comparison of how that state did from the previous year versus how the nation did. And what I'd want to do is color this a little bit better. I'm going to wash it out, make it like 40% opaque, and then take my line. And I don't think we really need all those colors, so I'm just going to make it the same color. And we're getting close to what Josh was after, where he was comparing the state versus the nation. Sorry. So then the next question is, well, how do we format, how do we just show specific states? If we took state up to filter, we could say select none, and then we want to select Alabama, well, North Dakota, New York. Josh, what was the third one?
Alaska was the other one.
Right. And then Alaska, and hit OK. The good news is this is all being recorded. I'll share the link, but this is a really good way to start thinking about how do I compare two different values to each other.
Could you show how you did the how you synchronized again, and what exactly does that do?
Yeah, so let me go back to this guy. So I duplicated my sheet just so that I can show what's happening. And you notice that Tableau isn't pretty all the way along. So I'm going to say, make this a dual axis. And then for time's sake, we'll make these both line charts. So you'll notice that when Tableau did a dual axis line, I need to fix my accent, a dual axis line, it didn't necessarily make the y-axis the same. So this is my I'm trying to figure out why they're not, but when we sync them, and they never synchronize. Whenever you do a dual axis, it's not going to synchronize, but when we synchronize, we're able to see the difference. But let me unsynchronize and go back here. So I'm trying to see it looks like it's plotting them well. I mean, it looks like it's plotting this about twice the height of, so this is 2.8 and this is 2.9. This is 2.4 and that's 1.2. So they're being they're being shown on different axes. And if I was better at Tableau, I'd be able to drag labels up and have it make sense. But bottom line, in order to have it shown correctly, where we're going to take this axis off, is we would synchronize. And that's getting us the comparison that we need. So
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I wish I had a snappier way or a more meaningful way to illustrate how the difference in the axes are working. But you'll notice that the right is now lining up with the left. which means we can get rid of showing it, and we're just showing one. So visually, the big thing to pick up on looking at this canvas is the way these two pills are arranged. You'll notice they now have flat ends with each other. That means that they've been joined together in a dual axis. And that's how Tableau is going to demonstrate that. So I'll say that the first time I did this class, I was showing level of detail calculations in my very first class. And you know, it's a little bit of an advanced topic. I think it's wise to bring it up in the third class. And it opens up a world of possibilities when you want to do things that aren't in your visualization. So in this visualization, again, we have state and we have year. By creating that level of detail calculation, we were able to say, well, show us what the nation was across every single year. And then we were able to create these table calculations for both the nation and for both the state. So the other thing that had come up was the idea of the labels and getting the labels to show. So let's throw out, let's look across year. And then let's look across state. I right-click this to turn it into discrete. And we're going to look at GDP chained. So now I have just gonna grab a couple of these that are really close to each other. And I'm going to right click, going to grab them and say keep only. And that's not giving me all the year. Well, let's just do this. Let's say give me the state as my label. And you'll see that not all our states are being displayed. So if I click on label, I can say allow labels to overlap other marks, and we get a real holy mess. But we can then click on at least you used to be able to click on the label. There's ways that you can work on it. I mean, for sure, we can at least turn off different things if we wanted to. And there's ways that you can manually click and move it around. It's just been a while since I've done that. Okay. So with your permission, I'd like to take a break from Tableau desktop for a second to talk about something called Tableau Prep. And what I'd like to do, though, first is take a 5-minute break at 7:55 and come back at 8. And if anyone has questions or if anyone wants to throw something up on Tableau Public for us to look at, please do so. I'll be back at 8. Hey, I'm back. It's a little bit earlier. We've got a couple minutes, but I did want to throw up a visualization that I had seen this week that I thought was pretty effective, and wanted to see what the group thought about it.
That's pretty useful at understanding how age impacts your likelihood of, I guess, dying, right? So that it's a pretty good representation.
Yeah. So what I liked about it was it was very. It made an argument. There's an article that makes an argument. It's in the title of the article what the argument is. And then there's a graphic that makes an argument. And it's in the title of the graphic that sort of leads you to think about what the argument is. And I like the way that the Wall Street Journal uses text underneath their titles. This is a Wall Street Journal formatting practice to sort of give you a more analysis of what it is that's being shown, what the data is, where the source of the data is. You notice that's part of the graphic as well. And it's kind of compelling, visually compelling. I mean, there's this symmetry, but non-symmetry in the chart, this dynamicism that's being shown in the image, where if this was just a piece of art, it would sort of look kind of interesting as it is. So I thought it was a well done visualization. But like anything else, the data analysis and visualization is a journey that keeps you getting more and more different questions. And my question about this is the percentage of death figure, the percentage of deaths that's attributable to COVID, or maybe it's just the percentage of deaths of people who died in that age group. Because as you read in the article, it does all this skipping around between what is the total percentage of death, the mortality rate in an age group this year versus 4 years ago. And then making the argument that since the mortality has increased, we're going to say that it was because of COVID. But there's also text talking about deaths completely attributed to COVID. So I'd be really interested, and I actually sent an email to the author saying, what exactly does this graph show? But part of what it does is it makes me start thinking about the complexities of epidemiology and how you talk about how can you attribute death to a single disease when there's actually underlying factors that often go on in everything. And it's not just COVID, it's smoking, it's everything, people are complex, compounded things. But it's a simple bar chart. The actual name for this type of chart is called a spine chart, where you have something going down the middle and then bars that go to the left that do one thing and bars that go to the right that do one thing. This is a pretty simple chart. We were doing the line charts before, but here's a bar chart. And I'm sorry, we were doing the bars just now. Here's a line chart where, it's really nice. I mean, the headline makes an argument: Las Vegas Strip empty without conventions. There's a kind of cute title for the headline. And actually, if we go back a second, hang on, I'm trying to. This is the one thing I haven't gotten down well with. There we go. Okay, if we go back a second, you know, the headline grabs me here, but part of me wonders if we're being a little too flippant about people dying. Just an observation. Here, the headline: Las Vegas, luck, you know, out of luck. But the graphic really helps support the contention that at least it might not be causality, but there's a correlation between convention attendance and the number of visitors that are happening in Las Vegas. If I were king, I would have made the hues between the two different colors a little bit different, but it's not trying to boil the ocean. You know, it's a graphic that's not trying to solve the world. It's not a dashboard, but it's a nice little piece of saying, here's information, here's a way to make sense of it in a coherent argument. And that's what I wanted to bring to your guys' attention. So who is up to visualize a new data source? Now I'll take that as a cheering yes. And so what we're going to do is look at another Wall Street article. This is from 2018. And the article was talking about how the new online services, Netflix, Amazon, are trying to stay away from risque things like you would see in Showtime perhaps, or HBO perhaps, and be a little bit more family oriented. So this is a graphic that's from that article, and you'll notice that the title of the graphic really doesn't support the article headline. You know, what the title is talking about is the growth of scripted original series and how different platforms, how they're growing among different platforms. And I chose this to make a couple points, but also to keep with the theme that we started with movies. So to grab this data set, let's go over to Visualist. Let me get my cursor back. And what we want to do is go to our week 3 and get the Wall Street Journal scripted shows TV visualizations. So I'll start downloading that. Then I'm going to go into Tableau, File New. We'll open a brand new thing of Tableau. Connect to data. It was an Excel file, I'm pretty sure. So we'll try Microsoft Excel, and it was. And go read it in. So if we look at this, we see that Tableau didn't do that great of a job naming our headers. So what it did is it took our first row of headers and made it a row. So if we just click on this link here called Use Data Interpreter, that's right here. Let's see if we'll be able to clean it up. Yeah, we are. So is everybody there with this specific visualization, or this specific screen with the data being shown this way? Okay. Josh, Emily, you guys there as well? Perfect. Okay. So, I'm debating things. I'm debating saying, well, let's go analyze this, and letting you guys fall into the landmine or say, what is the landmine? So what's wrong with this data?
Looks like there's a lot, 8 years missing or 7 years missing of information.
Okay, great point. From a Tableau visualization analysis perspective, what's wrong with this data in addition to that?
Year could be its own column, rather than having an individual point for each year.
Right. So our data is not tidy. We don't have a row for every observation. So our first row, pay cable, has, what is it? Like 9 observations going across it. So we need to fix the data. So there's 1 observation per row. Do you guys remember how we would do that?
No, unfortunately, that's what I was trying to do with the last data set for homework, because I was trying to clean it up, but I completely blanked out how you did it.
No worries, man. So we're going to go over how to do it, but the key word that I hope sticks with you, because this is how you can find out how to do it, is pivot. What we want to do is pivot the data. So we're going to click on 2002, highlight that column, go to 2017, highlight that column, and then we're going to pull down the window and say to pivot our data. So now we have 36 rows, and every single row is a unique observation. But what we have to do is, hang on, sorry, need to go back and figure out why my screens aren't cooperating. Okay. There we go. Okay, so what we need to do is go in and change our field names, and we'll double click here, and we're going to call this column years, and we're going to call this column number of scripts. So if we go on to sheet 1, we're able to create our challenge. And this is what our challenge is. Our challenge is to recreate that chart. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to try to recreate that yourselves. Unless someone says no mas, and we can go right to it and try to work on it.
It's a good challenge. So there's no data between 2002 and 2010. So does it just assume data, or just it just plateaus?
Well, it just freaking assumes it. And that's bad on the Wall Street Journal. I was shocked when I figured that out, that they didn't have the underlying data that they were showing.
Yeah, because then the increase in 2010 makes people sort of realize or think, hey, something serious happened then.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it was between 2002 and let's check again. It was yeah, 2002 to 2010. So 8 years of that data is being the flat line is being assumed. So in particular, these guys, yeah, it's really a bad practice. And as we do this, I can show you how to replicate exactly what the Wall Street Journal did, but what I'm probably going to do is just go with 2010 and work with real data rather than doing this imaginary visualization.
So you would just exclude 2002 then, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But it's a misrepresentative picture. It's not entirely inaccurate, but it's misrepresentative. How are you guys doing? Did anyone get this?
I didn't get it, but I'm following, so I'm getting the concepts, I think.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's great. So to come close to this chart, we're looking at years. What row would years go on?
Columns.
Sorry?
In columns.
Okay. So we're going to put years into columns. And then we have number of scripts. And we put that into rows. And how would we get this to turn into just a simple line?
Under marks, go to drop down line.
All right. Okay, so now we have 2002, 2010. So what we could do is just take platform, drop it onto, well, here, before we do that, instead of a line, why don't we turn it into an area? And then just take platform and drag that onto color. And then platform, drag it into label. So Tableau right away is going to tell you, you're able to see that, you know, there really is nothing between 2002 and 2010. It doesn't make sense to show 2002. It's misrepresentative to show 2002. Bad on the Wall Street Journal for showing 2002. If we wanted to recreate exactly what the Wall Street Journal did, there's you don't have to remember this, but just to show you, there's something under analysis where we do special table layout, show empty columns. And then we would change years to something. Forget it. I thought I had a quick way to show that to you, but I don't. But if we just highlight 2002, we can say hide or exclude. Why don't we go ahead and just say exclude? You know, but now we're pretty darn close to this part of the chart. You know, this part of the chart forward. What do you all think of this? This is called a stacked area chart. I mean, from a visualization perspective, about the information it's conveying.
It's not my favorite. I don't really like things stacked one on top of the other. That's just a personal, how I'm absorbing information.
Pretty colors, though.
Well, we got to thank Tableau for that. Yeah. Now,
yeah, we use it a lot in DoD, and it's we refer to it as a sand chart, and you know, it's easy to figure out when, for instance, a system comes offline and when a new one begins. So I think it depends on the application.
Right, right. Yeah, so a lot of visualization theory would knock this. And again, there's no absolute rules, but the rule that this is breaking is accurately describing information, because when they've done studies and they've asked people, is this area increasing? What happens is people look at the upper level. They don't necessarily look at the lower level. And when they've asked people to say, well, what amount does this slice here count for, and write it down, people just have been, they're way off as compared to doing something like a bar chart, as compared to doing just a simple line chart. When you test people about their comprehension of the graph, oftentimes it's being driven by this upper line rather than the comparison of the upper and the lower. So in this case, you know, it looks like online has grown a heck of a lot. But if broadcast had actually decreased and these points were lower, it wouldn't be, you wouldn't really get it as much. You're asking the human mind to do a lot of different things. And I know I'm not explaining that as well. But what I wanted to do was to suggest, you know, perhaps a simple, a couple simple ways to look at this. So I'm going to just right click on duplicate. And why don't we go ahead, instead of looking at these as area charts, look at these as just simple line charts. So what do you all think about that?
I automatically absorb that much better.
Yeah.
It also shows the platforms are much closer to each other than in the area charts.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also, I think, you know, if you compare like online, actually, I'm wondering if this number is correct now. Okay, so it's saying online number of scripts 117. Here it's saying online number of scripts 117. Yeah. You know, I think it really emphasizes the growth of online a lot better in this visualization versus that visualization. And what if we wanted to change this to show market share? So rather than the total number of scripts each year, we wanted to show the percentage of the total for each year. How would we do that?
Could you do like a tree map or something similar?
Yeah, what I was going for was doing a table calculation. So we could right click on the pill, add a table calculation, and just say percent of the total. Going across. So this is not going to add up to 100%. Let's do this. That is not right. That is right. Okay, so let's figure this out ourselves. So I'm going to go back to sheet 1, duplicate it, change it into a line chart. Now, if we just right-clicked on this and said, give us a quick table calculation, percent of total, and then said, compute using years. Nope. Anyway, you're getting to where this is right, but I'm not explaining well how I got there. I mean, looking at what the and this was something I haven't done for a couple of years, for years since the last time I did it, but still I should have gone through this in planning for the class. So let's change it again into a line. And then if we want this to represent the percentage of the total, we'll add a table calculation. And we want this dimension, percent of total, platform. So what we're telling the table calculation to do is calculate the percentage of total by the number of years, but to compare between the different platforms. Gets a little involved to discuss, but I know that's right. And the way that I'll prove it to myself is to just come up with our basic chart. And then we're going to do our table calculation again. And then in the table chart, what we're able to do is show row totals and column grand totals. So to see the percentage within the market share, we need this to add up to 100%. I'm going to compute this using table down. And this is a check for us as we look at that line, we know that 2017 online should be 24%. And we're able to go back to look at online and find that it's 24%. Guys, I'm sorry I don't have a better way of explaining how I got here. I need to sharpen that. But the thing to take away from this is that table calculations can give you the relative percentage of the total, and that it's really a good practice to do a data table to check your work, so that you're able to say, okay, I know that my work works out, my work is correct. And the easiest way to check your work is to add grand totals to your columns and to your rows. And you do that through the analysis menu by going to totals. Okay, so I mean, are you guys sort of with me? One of the things this is good for is, so now we're looking at the relative market share of our different platforms. But if we look at the original visualization, what it was trying to do was talk about the growth of scripts as well. So we can add another pill to show the number of scripts. And hang on, I'm gonna get this. The number of scripts. And what we want to do is go down, and we want this to become just the total number of scripts. So rather than having a detail for platform, we want just the total number of scripts. And we can do that by taking platform off of my different measures. And I can then change this to be total number of scripts and their growth, and then the percentage market share. And maybe just for the heck of it, we'll change this to an area chart. And that's my to go to. Does anyone want to talk about any of the specific steps that were done? I'm sorry it wasn't more concise. Okay, so I want to go away from Tableau for a second and talk about something called Tableau Prep. When you all downloaded Tableau Desktop, you were also given an opportunity to download something called Tableau Prep. Tableau Desktop is the platform that we've been using to analyze as well as visualize information. Tableau Prep is something that you use to prepare your data for analysis. So I'm opening up Tableau Prep. I have it here on my desktop. And the idea behind Tableau Prep is to come up with visual ways of manipulating your basic data and being able to change that data and save it to save it as a flow. So I will show you something I've been working on. What this is I have a project that's been ongoing where I'm looking at Wikipedia links, and I'm trying to do network analysis between Wikipedia links for different occupations. So I'm looking at artists, I'm looking at politicians, I'm looking at athletes, and I'm asking who links to who and what are the characteristics of who links to who. So if you're an artist, if you're a famous artist, are you being linked to by people from a greater time span than if you were a famous tennis player? if you're a famous politician, do you have more links from people in other geographies than if you were a famous physicist, for example? So that's the kind of things I'm playing with. And what we've been doing with Tableau is we've been pretty much working with a single data source. And Tableau Prep allows you to do lots of manipulations with lots of different data sources in order to combine them. So with that as an introduction, does this correspond with what anybody sees as projects they're working on, that I should go a little bit deeper, or is that enough of an introduction?
I'm still not super clear what Prep Builder does. Is this like a sort of analysis note, like a, what is it called, analytical notebook, like analysis notebook? Analyst notebook, I'm sorry. Like link chart analysis?
Not exactly. So, for example, this is showing clickstream data. So this is 12 months of Wikipedia clickstream data. And when I open it up in Tableau, and it's shown to me as a data source. So this is another data source, which is, these are the links between Wikipedia articles. So it's not what articles are being clicked on to go within Wikipedia, but it's just, here's an article, it has 2,000 links. So if I look at my clickstream data, this is the link that's being clicked. And some, you know, these aren't that good. So these are the different article titles. So American football, for example, is something that's being clicked on. And then here is the Wikipedia page that it was linked from. So in the Mercedes-Benz Wikipedia page, Mercedes-Benz Superdome Wikipedia page, they provide a link to American football. And that was clicked on 270 times within 2018. So I'm describing my data here. So the ultimate goal is to come up with a file that I can then take into Tableau and start analyzing. So for example, this is a file that has a person in Wikipedia. There's 5 million people in the English Wikipedia. They all correspond to a Wikidata QID, which is a Wikidata information link. And Tableau is just gearing away because it's got Zoom and everything on it. It shouldn't be taking this long. So we have all of these here, these painters in Wikipedia, politicians in Wikipedia, physicists in Wikipedia, are additional files. And what I'm doing is I'm taking those files and I'm joining them with the previous file. So now I have all the people in Wikipedia, and then I have a specific checkbox if they're also a painter. And then if we go to the end of all this, what I have is all the people in Wikipedia, and then a check mark if they're a painter, a check mark if they're a writer, a check mark if they're a politician, a check mark if they're a physicist. So this is taking like 14 or 15 different files that have millions and millions of rows and just linking them together to create a single file that I can then bring into Tableau and analyze. So the point is Tableau is really good at doing data analysis with a single file, and it's gotten better. You can actually go into the Tableau desktop and bring multiple files in and relate them. But if you start talking about, I have in my project, it might be 60 different files. I have 60 different files that all do specific things that I need to relate to each other in specific ways. That's where Tableau Prep comes in. So I don't think it's a problem for anybody now, or if it is, my hat's off to you. There's a number of other products that you might come across, like OpenRefine or Alteryx, that do similar type of things. But Tableau Prep is a pretty powerful platform that's provided to you for free as part of your academic license. Yay or nay? Does it make sense to even bring Tableau Prep up to a SICE introduction to Tableau Desktop? I want you to know this is out there, but I'm pretty doubtful that you guys actually have a need for it right now.
So for me personally, I don't think I'll be using it, but I am happy to know that it's out there. And as you were describing what it could be used for, I was thinking of specific colleagues in the DIA program who might have that, not necessarily that large amount of data, but certainly more than I'm going to have, that could possibly be more interested in this than I am. But I'm happy to know it's out there.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, the next step up, I'll open it up again, is as you go out into your workplace, what you're dealing with is you're going to be creating analysis that goes to multiple different data sets. In this case, this analysis is going to 4 different data sets. And your data sets might be refreshed every day. So Tableau Prep could go to all 4 of these data sources every day as they're refreshed, and then refresh the file that's being sent to Tableau Desktop. And an enterprise version of Tableau Desktop can reload the dashboard every day as soon as the data is refreshed. So these are building blocks to an enterprise-wide data analytical platform that you probably don't need for what you're doing now, but it's sort of good to know that Tableau is able to do this sort of stuff.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and what's amazing is that they're giving you all a free license for a year to this. So if it comes up with something that you need to have done, I want you to know that it's out there. So I wanted to, yeah, we got to that. Oh, I want to show you just another way to think about visualization, and let me go this way. Sorry, let's do it this way. Tableau public. What I want to do is show you something that's on my Tableau public profile. And this is idea KPIs. So I'll give you the scenario. The scenario is, this is a government agency that has probably 50, well, for the sake of argument, 21 different projects that are all over $100 million of investment every year. And what they do is quarterly, they bring in the program managers for all those projects and have them give a report. And when they do the report, what they're looking at are these elements here to figure out, is the project good or bad? You know, and honestly, I'm willing to argue that 90% of the value of the process is just getting the people in the room every quarter to talk for an hour or so. And that maybe you really can't be that precise with rating things like funding or budget execution or costs or schedules. But what they do is they have a program review team that's 7 people, and the 7 people will all score each one of the programs based upon these ratings. So again, the process is really important, and you're getting a lot of value out of the process. What I want to ask is, are we getting value out of this type of presentation? So this is a group that's really familiar with Excel. They built up the Excel templates where every single reviewer is filling out the Excel template. They come in together, they're being averaged together, they're being aggregated together. It's my belief that the vast preponderance of the world runs on Excel. And I want to see that change, and I hope you can help me change that. But the vast world goes on Excel. So what I tried to do was give them a couple alternatives for ways that they could visualize how are their KPIs changing over time. And this is a view that's giving us the exact same information that we were getting in this view, but a lot more information. So in this view, we're only able to see every quarter what the rating was. In this view, we're able to see how the rating has changed quarter to quarter. In this view, we were having green or red or yellow. In this view, what we're doing is we're saying, okay, it's doing well, or it's doing poorly, or it's in the middle. And in creating it, what I wanted was just a quick way that program management would be able to look across their portfolios and say, are there trends that are happening here? One of the things that this view allows you to do is look across the average of all programs. You know, where are we strongest? Where are we weakest? It looks like schedules really need a lot of attention. Our schedules are where they consider themselves weakest. Risk, I think, is where they consider themselves weakest, but it's not necessarily something that they have that much control over. But, you know, this is just an idea of a different way to visualize something than from an Excel format that you might see. So we're doing data analysis, but the data is kind of a squishy human factor calculated analysis. But we're hoping that by looking at what the consensus was and how the consensus has changed, we might be able to save some effort with this multi-billion-dollar portfolio of where things are going. So this would be a view that you could dive down into each program. And then this is an executive program health indicator where we're taking all of the different factors and we're averaging them together. And this is a visualization that's called a pin and needle. So the pen, the circle, is showing what the most recent value was, while the edge of the needle is showing how it was before. So if your needle is to the right of the pen, you're getting worse. If the needle is to the left of the pen, you're getting better. So just a real quick way of saying, are we getting worse? Are we getting better? You'll notice we really upgraded what would show on the tooltip in order to be able to show tools. The takeaway from this is that it really doesn't have to be those hard numbers that we've been dealing with, or those quantitative numbers we've been dealing with. You can take things as amorphous as the average rating by a group of reviewers and be able to do some meaningful visualizations. Okay. I guess to sort of start wrapping up, I had a couple things that I wanted to show you up here, and you'll just have to bear with me as I close things. The New York Times has what's going on with this graph, where every week so we're done with like the Tableau stuff. I wanted to do a little bit more in visualization. Of course, if we have more questions, we can go beyond this, but I did want to point out a couple resources real quickly. New York Times, every week they have what's going on with this graph, where they present you a graph, and this is to increase graphical literacy. So people will do responses or questions, and then on Fridays, they'll have a web session where they talk about what went on this graph. So this is this week's graph. What do you all think of it? I like the idea of doing the bars. I think it's fairly simple. Any opinions from the group?
It seems to make sense to me. The way it's phrased makes me think I should be looking for a problem.
Yeah, that's well, that's just carrying on. I mean, their theme is what's going on in this graph. So this is part of the New York Times Learning Network. This is available to you all at no cost. There's a link on Visualist to this. Right here, this New York Times, what's going on with this graph. But, you know, I challenge, the New York Times does a really good job in creating graphs. I would say better than Washington Post, better than USA Today, and better than Wall Street Journal. And looking at how they've created their graphs and how they're questioning people to look at graphs can help jumpstart and inspire you as you try to do different visualizations. And even more important, it makes it easier for you to pick up visualizations that might be a little bit goofy. You know, like kudos to you all for figuring out 2002 to 2010. There wasn't any data. You know, we saw that once we looked at the data table, but that was underneath it. But there's lots of things, I hope, as you look at every single graph that's presented to you in the media and the workplace and the school place, to ask yourself, does this graph make sense? How is it showing the information? And is it showing it in a way that I might learn something from? So since we shifted to this graph, you'll notice there's really no difference between this graph and a standard bar chart, except what they did is they underlaid a gray bar underneath it. And then so what the bar is showing, what do you all think the bar is showing?
Percent women of total.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's showing the percentage of this category. So 52% of all essential workers are women, 78% of social workers are women, but I'm not sure whether social workers are essential workers. I guess they are. You know, I can buy in to like law enforcement. I don't know. You know, I think what it's saying is 70% of the social workers who are essential workers, 78% of them are women, and the total number of workers are 2.3 million that fit within this category. And really, you know, just look at it and think about it. So does this make sense? I mean, would would it make sense to show healthcare? You know, they're sorting it by the percentage that are women, but maybe if they just sorted it by the number who are women. So if healthcare is 19 million and 77% are women, then it's a much larger group of women than social workers. You know, maybe that deserved to be at the top. It's puzzling. I mean, it's just an exercise for you to look at and think about visualizations and the ways that they've presented them. Two things more before we go to questions. Are you all familiar with 538?
No.
So 538 is run by Nate Silver. This is an online news publication that has a strong focus in data analytics and visualization. And they do some really great work. So this is talking about the election. And honestly, you know, I'm kind of not proud, but I personally have had too much COVID information. So I wanted to do the class without going to COVID information. So we only did 1 or 2 charts that talked about COVID, and we only did that today. When I delivered this in March and COVID was new, it was 90% COVID charts and information. But looking at how the election is being portrayed is an interesting experience. What Nate Silver believed is that the people were just bitten in the butt, sort of by showing like a bar saying Trump, Hillary Clinton has a 76% chance of winning. So they've gone to what they believe is a better way to show visual uncertainty. And this is doing something called a Monte Carlo simulation, where they run a lot of models, and in these, they run 40,000 models, and 86% of the time Biden wins. And they're showing a dot each time to disaggregate the information so that people don't see that percentage as just a fixed thing, but they see this as there's a continuum. Like there's a chance that 13 in 100 right now that Trump could win another election. So it's a great publication. And I think it was Josh today who brought this to, or Paul Leon, who brought this to my attention. I wasn't aware of it, Visual Capitalist. This particular visualization was making its rounds in Twitter the last 2 weeks ago, and half the people hate it, saying you're not getting information from it. The other half of the people love it, saying it's a new visual way, that it's an arresting way of picturing how things, it makes people look at it. And then if you have text that's meaningful, it would make people look at the text that's more meaningful. I'm not a big, visually, I'm a fan of it. You know, if this was a piece of art, I would be a fan of it from an information perspective. If this was shared with me in a workplace, I don't think I would be able to know what to do with the information. So all of this is here in the Tableau, on the Visualist website. You can always reach me by email at paul@visualist.com. What's in your email. If you run into specific problems, please do so. And, you know, we got a couple more minutes. Are there any questions or feedback you'd like to offer?
I just wanted to say thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Yanni.
No, I was going to say, sir, you stole my words. I was no questions here. I just wanted to say thank you. It's definitely going to take a lot of time to unpack a lot of the information that you have on your on Visualist there, and it's definitely gonna, I think, take me a few weeks to go through all of it. I understand, of course, 9 hours is not a lot of time to spend together. But thank you so much for your help. I think this is definitely going to help a lot of us with our thesis. And I work for the U.S. government as well, so I think it's going to definitely carry on and help me with work as well. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad. Thank you all. Don't be daunted. Your goal is to go from pothole to pothole as quickly as you can. So once you climb out of a pothole, congratulate yourself the next time you run into one. I'm happy to provide some guidance on how to get out of it. And it might be, have you looked at the help file for this, or here's some Tableau community resources. But this is something that, compared to any other software system I've seen, you can be more productive faster in a quicker time than anything else I've seen. So thank you all. It's really been a great experience, and my first online Zoom class, you really made it painless. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This has just been incredibly valuable. I'll echo Yanni's statements that there's so much here. So I think there will be a lot of follow-up going on to absorb some of this, but it's been incredibly valuable.
Absolutely. We'll be putting this up on the web. I'll provide Luke the link, and don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything I can do. Thank you all. Cheers.
Thank you.